I didn't resume the recording, so whoever didn't show up today is going to miss the beginning half of this. But we were just talking about doing a Chat GPT webinar for your customer, or like a learning lunch hour, or something like that, where you could present that kind of a conversation with your customer. And John says he's loaded up this deck with some things that you might want to see. So we will send the deck out in our Monday morning email, along with this a few minutes short of normal recording.
All good. They've only missed the best nuggets of the entire session. So speaking of those good metrics, a lot of the way Shadow IT or ChatGPT gets into a business is through what's called Shadow IT. I don't think I need to belabor that point. I think everybody kind of knows what Shadow IT is, but it kind of has like two perspectives, in my opinion. You have Shadow IT, which is, your traditional Shadow IT that your business doesn't know about. I think there's another perspective on it, which is there's Shadow IT the MSP doesn't know about. In the sense that because you are basically an extension of their company, anything that's being adopted outside of your purview is essentially Shadow IT to you. And now the metric here, this is a Gartner metric, 40% of IT expenditures are coming through Shadow IT. So for the average 100-person company, this is what the makeup looks of their SaaS ecosystem. You've got, this is your sanctioned managed apps. This is your Salesforce, your Marketos, your MailChimps, your whatever they might be, the tools that you use to run your business, your ERPs, your CRMs, your finance systems, things like that. Right here, all this gray, which is about 40% of it, is your Shadow IT. This is your chat GPTs, your scheduling softwares, your productivity tools, your file sharing tools, your things that employees adopt because they're not happy with the tools they've got, or because they didn't know the tool existed there, or because they just, quite frankly, didn't want to follow the process, but they put their data in there and their business data in there. And then this 25% mark is what I consider like the most frustrating part of the SaaS ecosystem. It's just shelfware. It's waste. It's pure waste. 25% of the global SaaS market is underutilized or wasted licenses. It's me signing up for a tool on my company card, or getting my manager to approve a tool, and then me leaving and nobody using it ever again. And it's only until months and months, or maybe even some cases years, go by until somebody really does an introspective dive and goes, wait, we're not using this anymore. That represents about, I think it's $100 billion of waste annually in the US for wasted licenses.
I still remember finding some of that on my credit card at my MSP.
Yeah.
2 years later. But you also say underutilized software here too. So this is when we sell a client 30 licenses for something, they really only need 20, and we don't do a good job truing up our licensing and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That, and software where there's opportunity to remove it, right? Like duplicate software or overlapping software. Giving somebody $100 a month Salesforce license to pull a report at the end of the month versus just automating a schedule over to it, things like that.
Okay.
But I will say, I also think I've kind of rooted Shadow IT down to really two root causes, no matter how it comes into a company for SaaS. It's either a net new business problem being solved. So, I didn't have any way to send my customer my calendar, so I signed up for Calendly. I put my business data in there, and now I can send my customers my calendar. They can schedule with ease. So it's a net new business problem being solved. Or B, it's a existing business problem being solved, that there was a training gap that something already existed. So why aren't you using Microsoft's solution to this to actually go scan your calendar and schedule over? So Shadow IT comes in two forms. I really don't believe a lot of it's malicious. There are malicious cases, of course. But at the heart of every SaaS tool is a business problem being solved. And so when I talk about Shadow IT, I don't like to like slap their wrist for doing something wrong. I like to just ask the question, like, what business problem are you trying to solve? And switch that IT issue into a business challenge and a business conversation. And that's going to unlock big opportunities. At the end of the day, and by the way, like, I don't know, you can use the hand up emoji, or you can just interrupt me, or you can throw it in chat. Like, if anything pops up, you're welcome to ask questions. At the end of the day, Shadow IT is because business owners now procure SaaS. Business stakeholders procure SaaS. My manager is PMM manager. He can go sign up for SaaS tools, and he can go procure tools all he wants, and he doesn't have to really go. He should go through IT. It is part of our process, but nothing is stopping him from going through IT. Yep. And this is what happens across all of our customers. Is the case that people need a business problem to be solved. They don't want to wait on IT because it's too slow, or IT is the no team. And so they just don't tell them and they go procure something.
It's
But
easier to ask forgiveness than permission, right?
yeah, and it's a lot easier now because I just go online and sign up. And back when I was at my MSP, I remember tickets coming in saying, hey, we need to distribute this software onto everybody's computer. Something needs installed. And that's how IT procurement. It went through IT. IT found the software that needed to be disseminated. We procured it. We bought licenses for it, installed it on a server, installed it on all the workstations. And that was procurement of software.
Yep.
Now, because thank you, Salesforce, for the Ghostbusters logo with the little arrow saying no software on it. Anybody procures SaaS. So because there's no central management of the SaaS, and because there's no Windows administrative lock for SaaS tools to lock them out of it, anybody can procure it, and it's a big issue. It is a big enough issue that customers are demanding it. This came out of the CompTIA State of the Channel, the latest, like literally fresh off the books 6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago. CompTIA did their State of the Channel. SaaS application management is being demanded by 47% of customers up to their MSP. Or
So
rather,
that leads right into Mark's question. I don't know if you saw it in the chat.
oh, sorry.
But no, that's fine. He asked the question and I figured we'd circle back to it, but this is a great lead up to it. He says, what's the best way to introduce this to our existing clients? Because he's found that some of them feel like it is Big Brother, right? And they don't want to. And we know there are layers of monitoring, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have to necessarily deploy Big Brother, but end users don't understand that. They think they're being watched anyway, even when they're probably not. What's the best way to have this conversation with the 53% of customers that aren't asking for it?
Yeah, so it's almost in the wording right there, SaaS monitoring. It's a small little twist. We're talking SaaS management. There's a difference. The word monitoring, we got to be cognizant of like ever using that word. And even though we on the room know SaaS monitoring and SaaS management are fairly similar, approaching with the customer this concept of SaaS management, which really boils down to the fact that you're collecting the data and the telemetry and the analytics to support their customer SaaS ecosystem, not taking that data to go do employee productivity. We have reports in our system around usage, which is about like license contract management. So I want to know how much Alex Varling's accessing Salesforce because I want to know if he's using a license or if he's wasting a license. I don't need to do it because I want to go slap his wrist for being on Employee Watch. I highly advise, even if your offering for SaaS management has it, do not bring down employee productivity reports down to your customer unless it's just like going to be a make or break, because as soon as you do that, you will now become like the person. Every time they think an employee is working remote and not doing something, they're going to call you and say, I want to report on John. I want to report on Jim. I want to report on this. Focus on the important areas. Focus on the security risks of shadow IT. And I'll get a metrics slide in here. So focus on the security risks of shadow IT. Focus on the areas where like the CEO can actually empathize with it. Like focus on the fact that shadow IT is costing them money. It's costing them productivity because people are putting data in different systems. There's an easy question you ask like any CEO, like when you go to find a file, how frustrating is it to have to go to like 10 different systems because people sign up for their own tools and they put data everywhere and it's so frustrating. Focus on the pains that are normal in SaaS and how you can help solve it. Now, one thing I will mention with SaaS management in particular is focus on the areas that they know or that there's a visibility gap. So like operationally, think about employee offboarding. Like if you don't know what they have access to, or you don't know what tools they're using, how are you supposed to be able to do your job? And where we coach in our platform and in our onboard journey and a QBR specifically is talk about the top 10 shadow IT that you found since the last quarter. Again, I don't care which SaaS management tool you go with, like talk about the top 10 shadow IT and ask them what business problems they're solving with it. SaaS management can feel like Big Brother if you make it Big Brother, or you can make it strategic where you're talking to them and saying, hey, you're adopting new tools and we want to help you talk about business problems that you're solving. And we want to talk about operational efficiencies. We don't want to talk about employee productivity because that's a rabbit hole you'll never get yourself out of.
Well, and there's a difference too between the conversation about productivity and risk. SaaS applications present a ton of risk to your organization. Again, when we offboard an employee, if I leave them access, and there's some stat out there, I don't remember what it was, but it was something like 83 or 85% of employees, enterprise employees, still have access to enterprise data when they get terminated.
Yep.
That is gross.
Yep.
And I bet you the number is the same at the MSP level or at the SMB level, because we don't have the tools in place to see what they had access to. How powerful would it be for you to be able to go back to a customer who just walked somebody out of the building and say, I got them out of the first 5 products on the list. These other 19 I've never even seen before. Didn't know they were, we don't manage these for you. How are you going to get this customer out of or this user out of those tools? And that's a tough conversation to have after the fact. Imagine if you could have it before the incident happens, and just explain that level of it to your customer. I think there's a much better talking point there around, remember that employee that we had to let go and we had to go find all that stuff, or maybe we don't even know what they had access to. We don't know where they were storing data. We really would like to have that visibility.
And I agree with that. We actually coach during our onboarding journey to onboarding of a client journey, whoever your stakeholder is that you're working with down at the client, to kind of remove that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Give them their offboard report. Just show them their offboard report. You don't have to get the granulars of another employee. Like, show the IT director their offboard report and say, hey, like, these are the tools that we manage. Here's the tools that you have access to. At least in our system, here's the ones that are removed with single sign-on. Here's the usernames they're using to log into those. Here's the usernames they've shared with other people for that tool. But show them their report and let them kind of draw that line, because what you end up finding, and if you even think about it, like if I asked everybody on this call to like line off the last 5 or the last week of apps that they've used, you're going to give me like 30 or 40%, because you're going to forget.
I couldn't
remember. I had to go to bill pay because the customer refuses to pay me a different way. Oh, I had to, hopefully not that, but I had to go over here to, Dropbox to send something up to my accountant on the other team so that they can process this. Like, you just forget not only about the SaaS that you've procured, but all the business apps. Like, in our system, we call business apps things like the CFO's online banking portal. Don't forget about offboarding that. That's kind of important. What about the the accreditation portal? What about the education management portal? All these other areas that aren't really your responsibility, but being able to say, hey, here's what our responsibility starts and stops, and here's where yours begins.
Yeah.
So,
and do you guys encourage a conversation too about how to shift some of that so that the MSP takes on more of it and the customer takes on less of it? Like,
we give them a report that talks about which ones don't have SSO and which ones do. So one of our biggest focuses is like, let's get those apps that aren't using SSO first. Let's just get those in. Let's move them over to product 365 or workspace login, whatever they're using. Get that migrated as a first step. That way you can inherit the MFA policies up top with the actual system with the productivity suite you're using. We then try to actually root out waste and duplicate software. And then at the very end, we try to maybe move it under management. The key things to move under management are expensive licenses. Like, you can ROI pretty quickly if your customer forgets to offboard a Salesforce license for a handful of months, or forgets to offboard an AutoCAD or an Adobe license or something like that. Pull some of those expensive things, pull some of the more support intensive items under your threshold. But you're going to find hundreds of apps in some cases. We had a customer where they went to their largest client, asked them how many, we teach this, like, ask your customer pre-assessment how many apps they use, and then show them after the assessment how many they actually have. And what we end up finding, this customer said they had 75 apps, and we showed a report that showed 426. But you don't need to manage 426 apps. You need to help your customer know that they're there, get lifecycle management, get business owner management on them. You just need to help your customer know it's there, and then you can work on a QBR cadence to keep that list up to date and to prune it.
Well, and from the MSP perspective, right, we're all talking about compliance and regulation and all these things that are coming down the pipe. There is not a compliance framework out there that doesn't start with know who and what you protect.
Yeah.
Right. SaaS is what you protect. It's where your data lives. It's how you run your business. So it's becoming more and more important as we move more data out there.
Absolutely.
And it's in CIS, it's in NIST, it's going to be in the new CompTIA Trustmark framework. It's everywhere.
At a root level, it is probably one of the most important areas short of your users to have visibility into, given the sense that that's where all the data is at today. But you're right. It's CIS. It's in the IG1 areas of CIS. It's one of the most fundamental ones. It's just as important of knowing your user accounts as knowing your software account.
Yep. And Jeff just shot me a message and reminded me too, the new FTC ruling almost requires it of anybody who's in banking, right? Or who's in doing any kind of finance. So there's a million ways to broach this with, it's not me, man. This is being forced on you by everyone else.
And we actually, we were supporting a massive dealership where we had found doing an assessment that every dealer site, this isn't going to surprise anybody, but I was surprised. Every dealer site, the manager signed up for a Gmail account and then shared it with all the team members. And that's how they all shared files. And they had to have this, they never rotate the accounts. They never rotate anything. So this MSP made a nice chunk of change doing a project, migrating all those behaviors out. But what if you can't see it, you can assume there's some bad things happening. But again, it's about stack ranking the risk. It's not about telling where they're doing it wrong. It's creating that relationship. Alex, you hit it on the nose earlier. Here's your metric to support you. 31% of employees, you asked in the enterprise, you had the data. Here's your data. 31% of employees access tools from your previous employer. This is your metric says 85% have access, which is true. 31%
Actually use it. Oof.
So that's your sub metric in there. 65% of remote workers are using Shadow IT. We all probably are supporting hybrid environments. A third of successful cyber attacks will come from Shadow IT. That's Gartner. And 30 to 40% of IT spending Shadow IT. I'll send this out with all the refs to it too. It's in all the notes here, so you guys can have access to those links if you want to prep up something to share with your customer. But I always say there's no company impervious to Shadow IT. At the end of the day, there's one company. There's one company that's impervious to Shadow IT. It's a one-man shop because they know what's going on. But like after the first person's gone and it's down to two people, there's Shadow IT. And the reason is the bigger companies, you get more employees, everybody's signing up for their things. The smaller companies have less process for managing it. And most 80% of employees admit to using SaaS Shadow IT. So there's nobody, I've had people try to challenge me before that they don't have Shadow IT in their environment, and I challenge them back. So here comes the point where regardless of, you don't even need a SaaS management tool to do the next steps I'm going to recommend for you, by the way. This is all just freebies, take them away. I've got some checklists and stuff for you in here too. But introduce the following questions in your QBR cadence. You don't need a SaaS management tool to introduce these questions. Ask, is there any new business problems you solved last quarter with new SaaS tools? Have you guys signed up for anything new? Like something very small that you may not be asking today can unlock a lot of opportunity. Because again, at the heart of that SaaS tool is a business problem being solved. So you can ask what SaaS tools they're using, what new ones they've got to maintain your vendor management list and your app management list. But then when they tell you these new tools, always follow on the question with what business problem are you solving? Because nobody in the world is just signing up for tools for fun. Like nobody decides I'm going to sign up for Dropbox today. This is it. Like I'm finally going to do it. So get to the heart, get to the business problem. And then what business problems do you intend to solve with new software in the next quarter? These two questions are going to help tighten that life cycle. When you are talking to your customer, if you're asking this on a quarterly cadence, you should know about what they adopted in the last quarter. And then when they say we're going to adopt new things, you can check in next quarter and make sure they did them. If they're running into trouble adopting SaaS tools, or maybe there's a new business problem that they need to solve, you can intervene there and you can help be that trusted advisor on this. You can help unlock a project with them where they didn't know that you helped them with SaaS procurement, or they didn't even know that you would be able to help here. They just assumed they had to do it on their own. So adding those two questions are really easy. And then does the customer need help? Do you need help managing these vendor relationships? There are all sort of tools that they're using. The customer of yours is probably spending a lot of time doing user lifecycle onboard and offboard. Ask them if they want help with that. See if that's an opportunity where you can come in and become stickier, create more value, give them back time, open up your billable hours. These are easy conversations. And go ahead, Alex. I think this is a great recommendation, more than even chat, talking about kind of the contract piece of it too.
Yeah, we have a place in Lifecycle Insights for you to track contracts. So anything that's got a recurring bill, sit down with your customer, have them look at the credit card statement real fast. Just, hey, what do you see on that list that isn't on this one? that's a pretty easy way with no tools, just to say, hey, here's SaaS applications that you weren't even aware existed.
Yep.
Right. And then, that's an easy way for you to ask what's there that we didn't know about. And that opens you right up to the question of what's coming next month or next quarter or whatever.
Yep. Yep. And I will say tactically, here's your takeaway. This is probably the best things you can throw to your customer. I give this out all the time. Grab them, put them in a Word doc, put them in an Excel doc, put them in whatever you want. Put your brand up top and call it your vendor questionnaire. Give this to your customer, let them send it to the vendors when they're procuring new tools, let them feel like they're in control, or let them be in control of their SaaS and you're there to support them. But when it comes down to vendor procurement and like buying a SaaS tool, most people aren't skilled at doing it in an IT practitioner way. So give them the tools they need to do it the right way. Everybody gets this shiny object syndrome where they see a brand new SaaS tool and they're so energized to adopt it. And they go nuts and they sign up for it and they put their data in it. All of a sudden they sync up their 365 or they sync up their Salesforce. Now all their customer data is over. Help teach the customer to slow down, make these procurement decisions. I again would recommend break down a questionnaire, give it to your customer, let them have it. Say, hey, when you adopt a new tool, you can send this up to your vendor. And when you get the answers back, give it back to us and we'll document it for you. Or if you're helping a customer with vendor procurement, take this list. Or quite frankly, like if you're buying a new tool for your MSP, you should be sending this to your vendors. This is an easy low-hanging fruit that any vendor should be able to go through this effort. If they really want you as a client, they should be confident in being able to answer these. SaaS companies get it far too easy sometimes where companies sign up for their tool and make them work for a little bit, but make sure you're documenting all this because you want to know like what kind of commitments do you have to make before you even start the conversations. This is a pre-evaluation questionnaire. This is before you even get rolling. Like, where's the data hosted? Can I get SSO and MFA? Some of these should be instant red flags for your sign up process. I know Alex will send the deck out. I'll make sure it's got text content so you can copy these over and make your own piece of content out of it. But these are some really recommended questions to ask your vendors.
And keep in mind, that's just a starting place, right? If you have a high compliance customer who's sending out HIPAA data, you go way deeper than this. But for your basic, your basic simple software app that doesn't pose a lot of risk to the organization, just keep it simple. This starts the inventory process and sets you up with a process for adding these new vendors.
Absolutely. And good clarification. There should be much more in-depth process depending on the data and like the actual client type. But the reason why I like giving this to the clients or I know a lot of our MSPs will hand off something like this is like, they'll use it in the tool, but most of the reason they like it is because it starts that cadence. Like the goal is to really, by opening these questions and by educating them, it's not to solve the entirety of the problem. It's really just to get the cadence to where the customer isn't reactively coming to you when they procure SaaS. Like be part of that life cycle so that you can help them in the advisement of it. Like at the end of the day, SaaS is a big, hairy issue problem. Like there's lots of problems that are working, but I also stand very confidently at the end of the day, it will become a table stake of an MSP practice, not maybe this year, not next year, but at some point in the near future, helping your customers with SaaS, it's gotta be there because at the end of the day, it's the number one line item for most of your customers on IT, maybe only number two to you. So the support of it has to be there and the management of it has to be there.
Yep, 100%.
Regardless of the application, if you're documenting for your purposes, you need to know a couple things. You need to know who's in charge of it, whether it's you or whether it's your end client. This is going to help you for employee offboards. So you need to know who's in charge of managing the apps down at your client site. So when you hand off an offboard report, one thing I would make clear if you're doing offboard handoff items, make it very clear, maybe even updating some of your templates. Like we've offboarded Ken, but we have no access to the SaaS tools that they can manage, or we don't have access to the SaaS tools at your end site. Recommend doing an audit internally to ensure that Ken gets removed from other systems. I can't tell you the amount of times when I was back in the MSP where people would be like, well, you do everything IT. Like we thought you were doing this. When we said get rid of him, we said get rid of him for everything. So making sure you're refreshing and rehashing the fact that you have a line of demarc and establish what you did and what you can do on the offboard. And the customer, that can open even up an opportunity when that sales VP gets gone and gets let go and you have to help them. say, here's what I can help with. You can run an audit, use a SaaS management tool, run an audit if you want, but I'm trying to be like as non-pitchy as possible. So like just without even a tool today, making sure you establish your line of demarc of what you do and what you can't. You don't even need to really go into what you can't do. But like, what do you do? Where do you start and where do you stop? So that the customer isn't assuming you're offboarding them from all this other stuff. Have the business purpose. Make sure it's documented in your documentation tools. That way, when techs get a ticket in, they're not trying to scramble and figure out what is bill pay from my example earlier. Make sure all this is actually something that's somewhere in a documentation tool. So that's kind of it. I have the last areas. I don't want to hit the last slides. This again, get a little bit more salesy, maybe open up a Q&A.
Well, I want to weigh in on that last one that you had there. If you're using IT Glue and you have My Glue opened up to your customers, or they have access to IT Glue, we tracked all of our SaaS applications in IT Glue, right? Ownership of the application was a key field when we spun up a new SaaS application. As soon as my engineers found it, they would go document it, and we had to assign it to someone either on our team or their team so that we knew who the admin was on that application. Should be simple, should be easy. If your customers don't have access to your documentation platform, find a place where you guys can share that information in a standard way to share it, because process really will start to prevail if you deploy the right process.
Absolutely. As I said, I've got a little more content I'm happy to share. I didn't want to kill us by death by 1,000 PowerPoints. I know these are more open. So any questions from anybody, really anything SaaS management related, more than happy to answer.
Is anybody on this call already doing some sort of SaaS application due diligence with or for your customers?
I've put them all to sleep, Alex.
Right. Well, I just want to point out that I think that's opportunity. It's one of those things that is not, doing some diligence of some kind with your customers, sitting down with them and saying, hey, look, you're getting ready to bring on a new vendor. We should go out and ask them some security questions. That should be billable work, right? That is not help desk work. That is not what you sold them in managed services. Shouldn't be anywhere in your scope statement of work. In fact, it's probably something you should specifically exclude in your statement of work so that you can go back and bill your customers for it. And there are income opportunities here, project opportunities here. So it's awesome to see a couple of you guys are already using some of the right products in this space. We know the guys at Augment. We like the guys at Augment. They're John's competitor, but they're good folks.
They're my friends too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
so.
And that's why I try to keep a lot of my training agnostic, right? Like regardless of the vendor choice, like I will say kind of in the scope of SaaS management right now, especially for MSPs, it's really it's a brand new concept, and all of us are trying to figure out what's the most important. I think I will say from our side, our opinion is that the employee onboard offboard cycle is probably one of the most important areas to dig into. It's where the cost controls, the shadow IT stuff gets rooted. But Augment also has another offering that does a lot of other areas that we don't do. And there's not even overlap in the majority of the players in SaaS management. So I will say, definitely evaluate the different players, because everybody in SaaS, quote unquote, SaaS management, the category and MSP are doing different things, because we're all trying to figure out how we can help the MSP the best. So the landscape's completely disparate. Almost every vendor is doing something different for SaaS management.
Well, that's kind of how our space was too, right? Everybody looked at us and ScalePad and said, I'm only going to buy one of them. But we had very little crossover between, some very basic warranty lookups and maybe create a recommendation or something, right? We're over here building budgets and client-facing reports and those kind of things, and they're doing end-to-end asset lifecycle management, putting out, purchase acquisition warranties of all that kind of stuff, and IT asset disposal and all that. So everybody thought we were direct competitors, but it's kind of funny when there's this much overlap in between, and a lot of blue space on both sides. So that's interesting to hear. We do integrate with two of the players in the space, SaaSleo and Augment, and we do have some partners who use both. So that's important to say.
Yep, absolutely. And again, it's SaaSleo, ISM. I don't know. I can't even say the names right anymore. I'm all confused too. But I will say from my perspective, I mean, again, open floor Q&A here. Also just open inbox Q&A. Like if there's something you don't want to jump on the main floor and ask, we can throw out the email, and you're more than happy to reach out to me. I am a non-quota carrying member of the team, which means
Isn't that a great place to
yeah,
be?
it's an amazing job. Like I will literally just answer questions. My job literally is to educate people on the problem. So that's why, again, I tried to come to today with some like non-vendor stuff around how to solve the problems.
Nope. I love it. I love it. I stuck your LinkedIn out there so people can come hang out with you out there and harass you with all their questions. And if you guys do any trade shows and see John, I highly recommend hanging out with him. Smart dude. I always get smarter listening and talking to him. We're kind of building SaaS applications at the same time and got to have a lot of interesting conversations about just about how to build and grow that. So it was fun.
I'm actually probably one of the best people to hit it. I will be at MSP GeekCon. I will say two things. I am non-quota carrying, yet I still have a company card. So that's why I'm the best person to hang out with at a conference.
Yep, there you go. You and me both, buddy.
But no, like I'll be at an MSP GeekCon, IT Nation Secure. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn and you're going out to either one of those two in the next, in IT Nation Connect, I think after that. But if any of those three sound like conferences you'll be at, give me a holler on LinkedIn. We can connect, grab a coffee out there, chat. Be more than happy to meet anybody and have a conversation with anybody about the litany of topics. So.
Yeah, Matt, you're spot on there. What the management team of their does and doesn't use. I can tell you just from ScalePad's perspective, we onboarded and they went, here's all the tools. I have yet to get training on any of them. Lucky for them, it's all tools I've used in the past, but no training, no nothing, just here's the tools, rock and roll. And I'm sure they've bought me licenses for stuff that I'm never going to use.
Well, and Matt's point is actually one that I forgot to mention earlier. I mean, I have all sort of little stump speech and quips like this, but like I do say SaaS management is a very unique, it's both an IT problem and a business problem. It's not just an IT problem and it's not just a business problem, because SaaS is like a little bit of both. But I will say, I think that from my history in the MSP world, SaaS is really an issue that the CFO will care about, which is, it's hard to get them to care about wanting to spend more or spend less. I mean, they'll love to have the conversation about spending less if you can help them get rid of shadow IT. It's also like an issue that the CEO will directly care about the security impact of. They're seeing these data breaches everywhere. Their vendors are part of data breach. That's something we do, which is breach watch in our product, where we'll watch for third-party vendors. SaaS tools have a vendor incident and tell you how to remediate some of that stuff. It's a little different than your normal CVE because in a lot of cases it's out of your control, but we take the vendor's recommendations and tell you which users were impacted by that. So for instance, LastPass, nothing you can do about it except for what the vendor recommends when they had their breach a handful.
Change a bunch of passwords.
Yeah, but we sent you who was impacted, which users were using it. We integrated into the QBR notes section an area where you could put your offering of a password manager and make sure it's presented on the next QBR. If they have LastPass, you can put a proposal where it says, hey, we provide XYZ password manager. LastPass had a breach. These users were part of it. Would you like to migrate passwords over to our password manager? So we can help with some of that strategic stuff too in our QBR notes section.
Nice. Awesome. I'm with you on that second one, Matt. Like it is tough to decide what the difference is sometimes, especially with things like ChatGPT, where there's the free version and there's the paid version. Canva, there's the free version, there's the paid version. If somebody's using the free version for work, they're probably going out and logging in with their personal Gmail account just because that's what they signed up for it with, and God only knows what got copied up there. Yeah. It could be an internal sensitive PowerPoint that's only designed for those who are in the know. Somebody literally sent me a link earlier today on a conversation we're having. He said, oh, check this out. And it's from a investment capital company. It's their literal like Q2 2023 big overview. Like they probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this research. Right at the top of the document, it says sensitive, do not distribute. And it's on a public web link on their website.
Yep.
And so, those kind of things, like who knows who put that in. Somebody built that probably in Canva, and here it is hanging out on their public web link on their website. So it is tough sometimes to distinguish between the two. I think there's to John's point, there's something there about cost. But to the other question is, what do you do when you get there, right? When you go to that website, what kind of data are you putting in there? And I think there is just a training component to this that is, if you don't pay for it, and we haven't gone through and classified this application as something that you can send sensitive information from, like email where encryption exists, or a secure storage tool, then we probably need to be very, very careful what we put in it. And some of those tools, like the ones that you use to build presentations, get scary depending on what you're putting in the presentation and who you're presenting to, right? You don't want the board meetings from your local community bank showing up in a data breach.
Yeah.
So
I-
awesome.
Yeah.
Great points. All right, just more stuff to help you guys have conversations. So I hope that's useful to somebody. I hope somebody will take this and go turn it into a lunch and learn with their customers or something like that. John, you emailed me this deck already, right?
Yeah.
All right, I will make sure that it goes out in the Monday morning email, guys. You'll have it then.
Yep. And the notes sections where all the references to all the data is, so you can pull your facts.
Perfect. John, good to see you, buddy. I hope we get to catch you for a beer here soon. I'll be in Orlando for GeekCon, so I'm sure I'll see you there.
Sooner than later.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Hopefully it's close to 5 o'clock your time and you guys can roll out, but we will talk to you all next week.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Great weekend, everyone.
Take care.